There was a man who on Saturday afternoon made a quick trip to the local grocery store just to buy some snacks because the big game was on TV and he invited some friends over to watch it with him. The store was totally crowded with people. So when he got his few things he needed, he looked for the 12 or less express lane. Just as he was getting there, the line was very short. A woman with a grocery cart loaded with groceries got in front of him and went into that line. But he was fuming. And he's standing there and he watched the cashier. And when the woman got up there, the cashier said to her, "My dear, which of these 12 items would you like me to ring up for you?" When I heard the story, I thought about the gospel because the cashier was being kind of clever in her dilemma. And this woman comes to Jesus. She's a Canaanite woman. First of all, she's a woman and she's not accompanied by a man. So that was the first thing that Jesus should not have approached her. And secondly, she was a foreigner, a Canaanite woman. Jesus had gone to Tyre and Sidon because he wanted some time just with his apostles alone so he could talk to them about his impending death. And this woman appears on the scene. And the apostles get irritated with her, don't they? Say, "Lord, why don't you just take care of what she needs and get rid of her?" Jesus doesn't respond. But then, at first she calls him son of David, which would be a political, polite thing to say for a Jewish man. But then she calls him Lord. She's gone into a faith in Jesus, and he sees that in her heart. And so he says, "Woman, your faith has saved you. Your daughter will be healed." And at that hour, she was healed. What Jesus did was shown that he came for all peoples. In the first reading, it says, "My Father's house is a house of prayer for all peoples." The readings today emphasize Jesus came for everyone. The Jewish people thought that he came just for them. But in this instance, he breaks that. He's now in a foreign land with a Gentile woman, and he hears her plea and he cures her daughter. He's saying to them very clearly, "I did come for everyone." And that's important for us to remember, that Jesus came for everyone, regardless of who they were, man or woman, Jew or Gentile, whatever nationality, creed, or anything, he came for them all. You might remember Father Flanagan. You probably have seen the movie about Boys Town. Back after World War I, there were a lot of young boys who had left their homes. There was economic strife, and they left their homes to go and try to find work. They were just teenagers and very young, and a lot of them ended up on the streets, and it was becoming a social problem. And many people were just looking at them and saying, "We've got to do something about all these young hoodlums." Father Flanagan saw something different. He went to Nebraska and he bought 1,500 acres of land, and he began building what we now call Boys Town. Remember his famous line, "There's no such thing as a bad boy." There's boys who did not get raised the way they should have. There's boys who left their homes too young. There's boys who had tragedy in their lives. There are boys who hadn't been to school. They're not bad boys, they're disadvantaged. And he began to welcome them. After 20 years, there were 6,000 young boys at Boys Town who were being educated and housed and loved and taken care of. Today, Boys Town still exists, and it also includes many, many young women, teenage girls who are in need. There's a lot of youth in our country that's homeless. We see that what one man did, he did what Jesus was saying, that he came for all people. It didn't matter where they came from or what their religion was, they needed help, and that's what he did. And I think that's what the Lord is saying in the scriptures today, that we need to remember that. And in our society today, isn't that a big question? The whole question of immigration and people coming from foreign lands where they're persecuted in their own homeland. And they come to the United States looking for freedom and opportunity and freedom of religion and freedom to work. And there's a lot of controversy, as you know. And we have to remember who we are as the United States of America. We welcome people from all lands who are looking for a better life. And it's not easy to do. It's too easy to judge a whole group of people because of what some people do. And the Lord's reminding us that we can't do that. He loves every person, and he wants us to love every person also. And so I think it's good for us to remember that in our own attitudes towards immigration and people that are in need. I remember speaking at grocery stores. A few months back, I was out of everything in the rectory, and I went to the grocery store to buy, and I thought I'm going to buy everything for about 2 months. So I had a huge grocery, cart full of things. And when I got to the checkout lane, and I was not wearing my collar, there was a Mediterranean, Middle East woman there with the sari on her head. She had just had a couple things, and I said to her, "Go ahead of me, I have a lot of stuff here." She was real grateful, and she checked out her couple of things, and she went around, and then she came and started helping me unload the basket. And not only that, there was no bagger there, so she was putting all the things in bags for me, and there were too many to fit in one grocery cart. So a friend of hers came by, and they got another grocery cart, and the two of them insisted on wheeling the groceries all the way to my car. And I was so impressed. I mean, that's the first encounter that I had with women of that nationality, and they were so kind and so nice. I'm sure they looked at me, this old man needs some help. But, it just reminded me that, just real people going to the grocery store to shop. And it makes you realize that there's so many more good than bad out in this world. And we have to be so aware of that and be sensitive to their needs. The Lord welcomes all people into his church. We need to welcome all people in the same way. And so wherever we are this week, we need to pray. The problem is much bigger than you and I can solve and understand because of the need for safety and security and all that stuff. But at the same time, we need to pray hard that God will direct our civil officials and whoever able to help with this to solve the problem. Jesus reaches out and says to us, you and I, we don't deserve Jesus' help. We're all sinners. We all have failed in loving God in one way or another. We've all sinned. But Jesus still loves us, and he welcomes us back to him all the time. And so we need to be grateful for that. The Lord's house is a house of prayer for all peoples, and we thank God that we're here today to worship him. So let us imitate his love in our relationship with others.